The hallway was silent, but not calm. Lights flickered above as if even the wires were scared. Guards stood outside the final room, with their heads down and hands shaking. No one wanted to be here, not near that cell. Her cage was made of layered glass and energy fields, surrounded by thick metal walls. Signs warned in bold letters. Do not approach, do not speak, do not stare. They called her the Void Witch, the monster in the glass cage. Some believed she was not alive at all, just a cursed machine of flesh. Others whispered that if you looked into her eyes for too long, your mind would break, and yet, someone had to clean the hallway, fix the lights, repair the scanners. That job now belonged to a human technician named Eli Crane. He wasn't special. He wasn't brave. He just had debts and a quiet life. And this assignment paid triple. When the warden told him about the monster, he only nodded. Eli didn't ask questions. He just carried his toolbox and walked into hell. The hallway was colder here. The walls seemed to hum with warnings. When he reached the final door, a steel panel slid aside, revealing the glass cage. He stopped breathing for a second. There, sitting cross-legged in the center of the room, was her. Her skin was pale blue like ice. Long claws rested on her knees. Her eyes were glowing silver and half-closed, her white hair floating as if underwater. She didn't blink, didn't move. Just watched. Eli's hands twitched, but he forced himself to keep walking. He looked down, avoided her eyes. Just patch the power cable, he thought. Then leave? He knelt by the wall, opened the panel, and began working. Minutes passed. The silence grew heavy. He could feel her watching him, like a pressure on the back of his skull. Still, she said nothing. Then, "You are not afraid." The voice was soft, almost curious. It echoed in the room, even though her lips didn't move. Eli froze, wrench in hand. He turned his head slowly, just enough to see her. She hadn't moved an inch, but her eyes were locked on him. He swallowed, heart pounding in his chest. "I was told not to talk to you," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. But she tilted her head slightly. "And yet you answer." Eli smiled nervously. "Guess I'm bad at following rules." Silence again. He went back to the panel, trying to focus, but then she spoke again. "They fear what they do not understand." Her voice was no longer cold, just tired, so tired. Eli slowly stood and faced the glass fully this time. For the first time in months, someone dared to look directly at her, and what he saw made his chest tighten. She looked young, not monstrous. Her body was strange, yes, her hands clawed and her form alien, but her eyes held sadness, not madness. She looked more like someone locked in a nightmare than the cause of it. "What do you see when you look at me?" she asked quietly. Eli didn't answer right away. He looked around. No cameras in this part of the hallway. No one watching him now. "I see someone who's been alone too long," he finally said. For a long moment, she didn't reply. Then her lips twitched, just slightly. Was that a smile? "Most scream," she said. "You didn't," Eli shrugged. "Screaming doesn't fix broken wires." He picked up his toolbox, turned to leave, but then paused and looked back. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked, surprised. It had been years since anyone asked that. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Scylla." Eli gave a small nod. "Nice to meet you, Scylla," he said, and walked away. Behind him, for the first time in years, the monster in the glass cage closed her eyes and breathed just a little softer. Something had changed, and the galaxy didn't know it yet. But the world's most feared being had just met the one human who didn't run. The next day, Eli Crane walked through the cold metal corridors with quiet footsteps. The guards still stared at him, whispering behind his back. No one had ever spent more than 5 minutes near her and returned calm. They expected him to break, to scream, to quit. But Eli showed up again, toolbox in hand. Same quiet walk, same slow breath. When he passed the last checkpoint, one of the alien guards leaned closer. "Don't look at her too long," the alien growled. "Her eyes melt your mind." Eli gave a polite nod, but didn't Stop, he didn't believe that anymore. He had looked, and all he saw was pain, not poison. He entered the hallway, humming softly to himself. The hum echoed in the silence. Ahead, the glass cage stood still, and Scylla sat exactly where she had yesterday. Cross-legged, arms relaxed, head tilted, eyes glowing faintly silver. She didn't move when he arrived, but she was watching him, that same silent gaze. It should have made his skin crawl, but strangely, it didn't. It felt familiar, like being watched by a lonely child through a window. Eli got down on one knee and opened another panel near the floor. More faulty wires, more broken systems. The facility hated this wing. The systems were decades old, and no one wanted to come this close to her, so everything here was falling apart. As he worked, Scylla's voice floated through the chamber again. "You returned." "I did," Eli said, not looking up. He kept his hands busy with wires, though he could feel her gaze like soft heat on his neck. "No one returns," she said. "Most run." "I'm not most," he replied with a shrug. "I'm just a guy who fixes things." Scylla was quiet again, but not cold, just thoughtful. "Even broken monsters?" she asked. Eli stopped, his hand hovering above a wire. He looked up slowly and met her eyes, silver, glowing, full of storms and sadness. "No," he said, "not monsters, just broken." Scylla blinked slowly. For someone who hadn't moved much in years, her eyes told stories, tales of war, chains, experiments, betrayal, and finally silence. "They taught me that pain is the only language others understand," she said. "When I scream, the world listens. But when I cry, no one hears." Eli nodded gently. "I hear you," he said softly. "I see you." A small light flickered above. The hallway glowed a little warmer, and something strange happened. Scylla shifted forward, not much, but enough to bring her closer to the glass. Her hands touched the surface, long fingers curling against it. Eli stood slowly, walked toward the glass. He hesitated, then lifted his hand and placed it flat against the other side. Their palms didn't touch. A layer of thick glass separated them, but something passed between them in that moment. Trust, a fragile flickering spark of it. No alarm sounded, no energy surges, just two beings staring through a wall that felt thinner than ever before. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the hallway. The intercom crackled. "Technician Crane, report to main station." It was the warden's voice, sharp and impatient. Eli lowered his hand, stepping back from the glass. "Duty calls," he said with a faint smile. Scylla's voice was soft, almost unsure. "Will you return again?" Eli looked into her silver eyes one more time and nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Tomorrow." As he turned and walked away, something unusual happened inside the glass cage. Scylla blinked and whispered a word she hadn't spoken in years. "Tomorrow." Behind her, cameras that had been offline for months flickered to life. Security logs updated. Command centers blinked with new readings, emotional fluctuations, mental spikes, psychic calm, all of it triggered by one human, back in the control room. The guards watched the footage in silence. The alien officer narrowed his eyes and said, "She moved." Another one added nervously, "She spoke first." The warden frowned. "No one's made her speak in 5 years," he said. "What's so special about this human?" No one had answers, but one thing was clear. Something dangerous had begun. The monster in the glass cage was waking up, and it wasn't fear she felt, it was hope. Eli Crane entered the hallway with a slight limp in his step. His left arm was wrapped in a patch of bandages, a result of a small explosion from a faulty energy relay he fixed earlier that morning. Still he came. Even pain didn't stop him now, not after what happened yesterday. The guards didn't speak today. They only stared as he walked by. Their eyes were filled with quiet confusion, maybe even fear. The monster in the glass cage had moved, had spoken, because of him. When Eli reached the cell, the hallway lights brightened slightly. The glass shimmered softly in the dim glow. "Scylla." was already at the front of the chamber, standing now, tall and still. Her hair floated behind her like strands of cloud, and her arms hung at her sides. She watched him arrive. "As if waiting, you're hurt," she said gently, her eyes moving to the bandage. "Just a scratch." Eli replied with a small grin. He walked toward the console but paused halfway, looking directly at her. Her eyes were glowing again, soft silver, not dangerous. He didn't feel fear, only curiosity. Scylla tilted her head. "Why return in pain?" "Because this place feels less cold when I talk to you," Eli answered. "And because I promised I would." Her lips parted just slightly, not a full smile, but close. No one had ever kept a promise to her before. Eli knelt to fix a flickering light panel. As he worked, sparks danced near his fingers. A soft hiss and a sudden pop made him wince. The wire jumped, biting into his hand. "Ow," he muttered, clutching his palm. A small burn was already forming. Before he could stand up, a voice cut through his pain. "Stop!" He looked up, surprised. Scylla had moved again. She was now directly in front of the glass, hands raised slightly. "You're bleeding," she whispered. Eli glanced at the small cut. "Barely," he said. "I've had worse." But Scylla stepped closer. Her breath fogged the glass. Then, slowly, carefully, she raised her hand and pressed her palm against the transparent wall. Her claws curled inward, gentle, without knowing why. Eli stood and stepped closer, his hand lifted, unsure, fingers hovering just inches from hers. He hesitated, but something in her eyes told him it was okay, that it was safe. And so, he pressed his palm to the glass, right where hers rested. Two hands, same size, separated by only inches of hardened glass. The moment held its breath. No alarms, no energy surges, no screaming guards, only silence. And then, something more. A hum. A low, soothing vibration came from the glass, as if it recognized the connection. Eli's pain faded just slightly, a warm feeling spreading through his arm. He looked into Scylla's eyes and saw something that made his chest ache. Not power, not danger, but relief. "I thought I'd forgotten," she whispered. "Forgotten what?" Eli asked, still touching the glass. "How to feel warmth." Her voice trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from something deeper, older, like remembering a dream from long ago. Eli lowered his hand slowly, heart still beating fast. He didn't fully understand what had just happened, but he felt it. Something had shifted, not just inside her, but inside him too. "You're not a monster," he said quietly. "You're someone no one ever dared to see." Scylla looked down for a moment, her voice cracked. "They made me into a weapon, used pain to shape me. They taught me silence." Eli walked a little closer to the control panel. He tapped a few buttons to stabilize the power surge, then turned back to her. "Well," he said, "it's time someone taught you something else." "Like what?" she asked softly. Eli smiled. "Like kindness." For a long time she didn't speak, but her fingers rested gently on the glass, even after he left, and when the hallway door closed behind him. Scylla whispered to the empty air, "Kindness." The word felt strange on her tongue, but not unwelcome. Back in the surveillance room, the cameras recorded everything. Engineers and security officers watched the playback in disbelief. One scientist turned to the warden and said, "She touched the glass." The warden's eyes narrowed. "No alarms," he said. "No reaction." Another voice added, "He calms her." For the first time in years, the data showed something different. Not danger, but peace. The weapon wasn't unstable anymore. She was healing, and it all started with a single touch. The rain tapped softly against the facilities shield dome. Eli Crane walked the lower corridor once again, toolbox in one hand, bandages still wrapped around the other. The lights flickered less now, the machines worked better. But the real change wasn't in the cables, it was in her. As he entered the hall, Scylla was already waiting near the glass again. She no longer sat curled in the corner like before. Her silver eyes met his immediately, and this time she looked calm. Eli nodded at her through the glass. "You're early today." he said with a light grin. I waited, she replied softly. I was thinking. Eli paused as he set down his tools. That sounds dangerous, he joked. Scylla tilted her head. Confused. I don't understand, Eli chuckled. It was a joke. Means you're starting to sound more like a person, Scylla blinked slowly. I am not a person, she said, voice low. I was never meant to be. Eli's smile faded. He stood up fully, walking toward the glass again. I don't believe that, he said. I've talked to 100 people who felt colder than you. Scylla didn't smile, but her voice changed. There's something I should show you, she whispered. The walls behind her suddenly shifted. Holograms flickered to life, old files, security footage, locked logs. Eli stepped back as images filled the chamber, scenes of war, destruction, and experiments. A younger version of Scylla, strapped to a chair, wires in her skin, energy surging into her body. Scientists, some human, some alien, watching as she screamed. Trying to unlock her potential, she was made, one of the old. Voices said, a perfect hybrid, built to end wars. Ayla watched in horror. The video showed Scylla unleashing storms of energy across battlefields. She wasn't given a choice. She was used. Why are you showing me this? He asked quietly. Scylla stepped away from the glass, her arms crossed tightly. I wanted you to know the truth, she said. I didn't become a monster. I was made into one. Eli stared at her. Then at the screens, the files revealed more. Her DNA was spliced from over 6 species. Her mind had been wiped more than once. They called her Project Seraph, not a name, but a title. He clenched his fists. This is what they did to you? He asked, voice shaking. Scylla nodded slowly. When I was no longer needed, they locked me away. Too dangerous to release. Too powerful to destroy. Eli paced in front of the glass, his mind spinning with anger. They had treated her like a bomb, not a living being. A living girl with memories stolen, kindness buried, and fear planted in her bones. He stopped suddenly and turned to her. They're still lying to everyone, he said. They tell the galaxy you're unstable, that you attacked first, Scylla. Look down. No one wants the truth, she whispered. They just want something to fear. Eli shook his head. Then we'll give them the truth, he said firmly. We'll find a way. Scylla raised her eyes to his for the first time. Her voice held something new. Not sadness but hope. Why are you doing this? She asked. You've seen what I've done. What I am. Eli stepped closer to the glass. I've also seen what they did to you. And I've seen you change. You're not a weapon. You're someone trying to remember what it means to be alive. A strange warmth spread through the chamber. Even the glass between them seemed less cold. Scylla lifted her hand again, placing it softly on the surface. This time, Eli didn't hesitate. He pressed his palm to hers, their fingers mirroring. I don't want to hurt anyone anymore, she whispered. Eli nodded. Then let's show. Then you don't have to. Suddenly, red lights blinked in the corner of the hallway. Security drones hummed to life. A voice crackled through the intercom. Technician Crane. Report to Warden's office immediately, Eli sighed, pulling his hand away. They know I've been spending too much time here, he said. They're watching closely now. Scylla's silver eyes locked with his. If they try to take you, she whispered, I will break this cage. Eli gave a tired smile. Don't worry, he said. They'll have to go through me first. He turned to leave. But just before the door closed behind him, Scylla called out softly, Eli. He stopped and looked back. Yes? She took a breath. My name, she said. It was never Seraph. It was always Scylla. Eli nodded, his voice low and steady. I know, and I'll make sure the world knows it too. The warden's office was cold, not because of the temperature, but because of the eyes that watched Eli Crane like he was already guilty. 6 officers sat around the long table, all in dark uniforms with silver stripes on their shoulders, only. The warden stood, hands behind his back, voice sharp like broken glass. "You've been visiting the cage more than necessary," he said without looking at Eli. "You speak to her, touch the glass. Stay longer than required." Eli remained standing, silent for a moment. Then he calmly replied, "I was assigned to fix the system, sir. They kept breaking, so I kept showing up." The warden turned around slowly. "You think we're blind?" he said. "You've made contact with her. She's not what you say she is," Eli said, his voice quiet but steady. "She's not unstable." One of the officers leaned forward. "She's a threat," he said. "She's a weapon built to kill. She has killed." Eli nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "But she didn't choose any of it. She was used, tortured, abandoned. Now she's healing." The room grew still, the warden's eyes narrowed. "And you want us to believe a few kind words from a mechanic changed her?" Eli didn't blink. "I don't want you to believe," he said. "I want you to see what I've seen." He pulled a dataship from his pocket and placed it on the table. "I copied surveillance footage," he said. "Watch it. You'll see the truth." An officer grabbed the chip and plugged it in. The screen behind them came to life. They watched as Scylla sat quietly, not threatening, not violent. Then came the moments they didn't expect, her singing softly to Eli's music, her hand on the glass, the way she reached for him when he got hurt, the moment she whispered, "Don't be afraid of me." The room was quiet when the footage ended. The warden turned back to Eli, expression unreadable. "What are you suggesting?" he asked. "I'm saying she's more than a weapon," Eli replied. "She deserves to be seen, not locked away like a mistake." "Do you want her freed?" someone asked sharply. Eli shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "But I want better conditions. Let her have light, a real bed, real food. Talk to her, not at her." One officer scoffed. "She's not a guest." Eli stepped forward, eyes hard now. "She's not a prisoner either, not anymore." Silence fell again. The warden sighed and waved a hand. "You're dismissed, Crane," as Eli turned to leave. The warden added, "But be careful. Too much heart around a monster can get you killed." Eli didn't answer. He simply walked away. But the fire in his chest burned hotter than ever. That night, Eli returned to the hallway. He wasn't supposed to. The warden had restricted visits for now. But rules didn't matter anymore. He stood before the glass. Scylla rose slowly from her place on the floor. "You came back," she said, her voice softer than usual. "They tried to stop me," Eli replied. "They don't want to listen." Scylla stepped closer. "They're afraid," she said. "Fear makes people blind." Eli placed his hand on the glass. She mirrored him again. "I told them who you really are," he said. "I showed them the footage. Did they believe you?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not yet." Scylla's eyes dropped. Her shoulders slumped slightly. "I will never leave this cage," she whispered. "They built it for me before I was even born." Eli leaned forward, his forehead touching the cold surface. "Then we'll tear it down." She looked up, shocked. "You would do that?" "I already started," he said. "And I won't stop." A long pause followed. Then, her voice shook. "Why?" Eli didn't pull away. "Because you're not a monster. You're Scylla." Something broke in her voice as she whispered. "They never let me be that." "They will now," Eli replied. "I said no to them. And I'll keep saying no until they stop treating you like a thing." A soft hum moved through the hallway again, not from machines, but from something alive. Trust, forming slowly, strong enough to shake even glass. Back in the surveillance room, the feeds were being watched closely. An officer leaned toward the screen and murmured, "He's changing her." Another added, "No, she's changing him too." The warden watched in silence, his hands clenched behind his back. "What happens when the cage isn't enough?" he whispered, and no one had an answer. Asterisk, the storm outside the facility raged like a wild beast. Rain hammered the shield dome. Lightning lit up the sky in violent flashes. Inside, alarms echoed through the metal walls. Red lights pulsed from every corner. Something was wrong, very wrong. Eli Crane ran through the lower corridor, his boots splashing through puddles from a leak in the ceiling. He wasn't wearing his maintenance uniform today, just a dark jacket and a bag strapped to his back. In his hand, a stolen override key. The order had come down just an hour ago. Project Seraph. Terminate immediately. The warden had decided she was too unstable, too dangerous, too close to being human. They feared what she might become. Not a monster, but free. Eli wasn't going to let them do it. He slammed his hand against the console at the end of the hall. The control screen flickered, scanned his key, and unlocked the doors to the glass chamber. Inside, Scylla stood near the center, her hair glowing brighter than before, her claws tense at her sides. She had already felt it, the change in the fine way. Air, the way the lights shifted, the sound of guards preparing weapons. You heard, Eli said, catching his breath. She nodded slowly. They want to kill me. Eli stepped closer. Then we need to go, he said. Now, Scylla blinked. How? Eli opened the bag and pulled out a black cloak and a small injector. This will hide your heat signature, he said. And this will fool the scanners for about 15 minutes. She looked at the objects like they were something sacred. No one had ever brought her freedom before. He helped her wrap the cloak around her shoulders. It was too small for her tall frame, but it would work. As she took the injector, her hand touched his, and suddenly, the power inside her shimmered. Glowing pulse passed between them. Not violent, not hot, just alive, Eli gasped. What was that? Scylla looked down at her hand. I never felt it this way before. She whispered. When I was made, they taught me to destroy. But this feels like light. Eli nodded. Maybe you were never meant to be a weapon, he said. Maybe you were meant to protect. Suddenly, the hallway doors slammed shut behind them. Voices echoed through the intercom. Security lockdown. Unauthorized breach detected. All units converge on Sector 7. Scylla's silver eyes narrowed. Her claws sparked with light. They're coming. Eli grabbed her hand. No. Hesitation now. Then we go through them, he said. Together, they ran side by side. Through the emergency exit tunnel, the lights above flashed red and white. Drones dropped from the ceiling, scanning for heat. One of them locked onto Scylla's frame and fired. She spun, raised her hand, and with a flick of her fingers, the drone shattered mid-air, not with violence, but with a wave of pressure, like the air itself obeyed her. Eli stared in awe. You didn't even touch it. She looked back. I didn't want to hurt it, she said. I just wanted it to stop. That was the difference. Before, they forced her to burn. Now, she chose to defend. They reached the end of the tunnel, only to find a thick steel blast door already sealed. Eli swore under his breath and began working on the panel. Behind them, footsteps pounded closer. Voices shouted. Scylla stepped between Eli and the danger, her body glowing brighter now, energy forming in her hands, but her expression was calm, not rage, not fear, only purpose. The first guard turned the corner and raised his rifle. Stand down, he shouted. You're outnumbered. Scylla's voice rang clear and strong. You fear me, she said, but I have never harmed anyone unless they struck first. I ask you, do you want to be the next ones who try? The guards paused, hesitating. One lowered his weapon slightly. She's talking like a person, he muttered. She's not even attacking. The others weren't so patient. One fired. The blast raced toward Eli, but before it could hit him, a wall of silver light burst from Scylla's body. The shot disappeared in midair, like it never existed. Eli looked up at her, eyes wide. You shielded me. She turned her head slightly. I chose to. The blast door finally clicked, and the tunnel beyond opened. Let's go, Eli shouted. They ran into the night, disappearing under the storm. Behind them, the guards held fire. Not because they couldn't shoot, but because they didn't understand what she was anymore. And maybe for the first time, they wanted to. The wind howled across the cliffs of Rethan's Edge. Far below, Rivers of mist rolled like waves, hiding everything from sight. The old satellite station above the clouds stood silent, unused for decades. But tonight, it was alive again, inside the broken station. Eli Crane adjusted the last power node. Dust blew through the cracks, and the old systems blinked awake one by one. Sela stood beside him, her silver eyes glowing softly in the dark. Her cloak was torn from their escape, her skin scratched. Her arms bruised, but she stood tall. "They'll find us soon," she said, her voice steady. Eli nodded. "I know. But before they do, the galaxy needs to hear the truth." He tapped a few buttons and began uploading the footage, not just the surveillance logs, but also the hidden files he had stolen from the warden's archive. Everything, how she was made, how she was used, and how she changed. The truth they buried for years. As the files streamed to the public servers, Silo watched the blinking lights. "What happens after this?" she asked. Eli looked at her. "They'll come for you," he said. "And they'll come for me." She took a step closer, her voice quiet. "Then let's leave before they arrive." Eli smiled sadly. Too late for that. Outside, distant lights flickered in the sky, dropships, fast and angry, moving like knives through the storm. The facility had found them. Sila turned to him. "I'll fight," she said. "I'll protect you." "No," Eli said, his voice firm but kind. "You're not here to fight. You're here to be seen." She stared at him, confused. "But they still call me a monster." He reached out and gently touched her hand. "They can call you what they want, but I know who you are." She didn't pull away. Her hand fit into his like it was made for it. Even with the claws and the glow, it was a touch of warmth, not danger, not fear, only trust. The door burst open, and guards stormed in with rifles raised, but they froze the moment they saw her. No blood, no fire, no screams, only a tall alien girl standing beside a human man. A voice echoed from behind the troops. The warden stepped forward, rain dripping from his coat. "You think exposing some files will change how we see her?" He barked. Eli didn't flinch. "I don't care how you see her," he said. "I care how the people will." "People fear monsters," the warden growled, "not stories." Sila stepped forward, her voice louder now. "Then let them see me," she said. "Let them see who I really am." Her hands rose slowly, not to attack, but to reveal the soft light that pulsed from her chest. It glowed through her skin like a heartbeat, pure, steady, peaceful. The soldiers lowered their weapons, one by one. They saw it too, not death, but life, not fury, but will. One young officer whispered, "She's not what they told us." Sila's voice broke the silence. "You locked me away," she said to the warden. "You broke me, shaped me, and feared what you made. But I am no longer yours. I choose who I am now." The storm outside calmed for a moment, as if the wind itself listened. The warden stared at her, and for the first time had no words. Behind him, a voice from his cum crackled. "Sir, the footage. It's gone viral. Entire networks are broadcasting it. She's all over the galaxy." The warden clenched his fists, but he knew it was over. Control had slipped from his hands, and the people were seeing the truth. He turned and walked away. The guards followed him silently. Not a single one raised a weapon again. Eli looked at Sila, breathless. "You did it," he whispered. She turned toward him, eyes glowing gently. "No," she said. "We did," he smiled. "You're free now." Sila stepped closer. "Then let me choose something. What is it?" he asked. She reached up and placed her hand over his heart. "You," she said. The words were soft but strong, simple but full of meaning. She had never known kindness, never been touched without fear, never loved, until now Eli took her hand in his. "Then let's go," he said. "Anywhere we want." They walked out of the station together, not as a weapon and a prisoner, but as two people who had changed each other. Above them, the sky opened slowly, the storm cleared, and light broke through. And as they disappeared into the misty morning, the galaxy remembered the monster who wasn't a monster at all, and the human who dared to reach for her hand.